Relon Voss was working alone on the edge of the canyon when the sky broke. One moment the sky was calm, the soft pink of a dying sun spreading across the horizon. The next, a thunderous roar split the air. Shadows raced across the cliffs as huge shapes tore through the clouds, trailing smoke and fire. He froze, his heart pounding. He had seen rumors of dragon battles above, but nothing like this. Nothing like the burning shapes that fell from orbit like falling stars. Rocks trembled under his feet as a massive object crashed into the canyon below. Dust and smoke rose in thick clouds. Relon squinted through the haze and saw the creature. It was small for a dragon, its scales silver blue, wings crumpled and covered in ash. One wing was twisted at a terrible angle, the other barely moving. Its eyes were wide with fear, and smoke curled from its mouth with each shallow breath. Relon's first thought was to run. Dragons were not friendly to humans, especially young ones in war zones. But something inside him moved faster than fear. He ran down the rocky slope toward the creature, ignoring the heat from the burning debris around him. When he reached the dragon child, it tried to move, but a heavy piece of wreckage pinned it to the ground. Its small claws scraped the metal uselessly, and its frightened hiss made Relon's stomach twist. He didn't know what came over him. He didn't know why, but he pressed his shoulder against the twisted metal and lifted. The dragon child cried out, a strange high-pitched sound that made Relon's chest tighten. Its weight was heavier than he expected, but he didn't stop. Sparks flew from the broken metal, and the canyon floor beneath them shivered. Above, enemy drones hovered, scanning, hunting, waiting. "Hold still," Relon said, more to calm himself than the dragon. His hands shook, and for a moment he thought he couldn't do it. But then he remembered what his father had said years ago, when someone cannot save themselves, you save them. He didn't know if dragons understood that. He didn't know if they would ever trust him. But he had to try. The dragon child's eyes met his. Fear turned into confusion. It seemed to understand that he was not attacking. Slowly its small wings twitched. Smoke rose from its torn wing, and its tail lashed weakly at the dust. Relon ignored the pain in his arms, ignoring the scorch marks on the rocks from falling sparks. Step by step, he moved toward safety, dragging the creature with him. A drone whirred above, scanning. A warning alarm went off in his earpiece, but Relon didn't stop. Suddenly, a strange heat rose from his hands, a warmth that burned without pain. Sparks seemed to gather around his fingers, flickering like tiny suns. The dragon child blinked, startled, and hissed at the fire, but it didn't move away. It was as if the flames knew to protect, not harm. Rocks and metal crashed down nearby, making a wall of fire and smoke. Relon pressed the dragon closer to him. He felt sweat running down his face, his arms trembling with exhaustion. He thought he might collapse, but he refused. One step at a time he moved. The heat around his hands grew stronger, spreading in arcs like living fire. Every time he stepped forward, the flames leapt ahead, pushing debris away as if clearing a path. The dragon child's small voice, soft, frightened, almost musical, escaped in a series of short cries. Relon whispered to it, words it could not understand but tones that promised safety. "I've got you. I won't let them hurt you." The words were strange even to his own ears, calm and firm at the same time. He noticed that the flames responded to his words, moving with intent. Sparks danced in the air, creating a protective dome around them. Above, the drones hesitated. Something was wrong. This human should not be doing what he was doing. Observers in orbit reported unusual energy signatures, reading them as impossible. Humans were fragile, weak, slow. Yet here was one carrying a dragon child, untouched by the fire and debris around them. The child's survival depended on this human, and for the first time, some dragons in the sky hesitated. Relon reached the edge of the canyon where the ground sloped gently toward a small, dark cave. He placed the dragon child down, careful not to hurt it further. The creature collapsed onto its side, wings trembling but alive. Relon crouched beside it, catching his breath. Flames continued to curl around his hands, not burning the ground, not harming the dragon, but shielding them from falling debris. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The dust settled, and the echoes of destruction faded into a quiet hum. The dragon child lifted its head and looked at him, eyes wide and searching. Relon smiled faintly. "You're safe," he said. Simple words but full of meaning. The dragon blinked slowly, a gesture that almost seemed like trust. Then the sound of drones returned, louder this time. Shadows moved across the canyon walls. Relon knew they didn't have much time. But he also knew something important. A human had chosen to act when no one else would. A human had faced the fire and refused to back down. And somehow, just somehow, the flames had answered him. He took a deep breath, feeling the heat around his hands surge one last time before calming. He would have to move again soon. The dragon child would need protection and the drones would not wait. But in that moment, Relon felt a strange certainty. Something in him had awakened, something old and powerful. He didn't understand it yet. He didn't know what it meant. But he knew this: he would not let this dragon child die. Not now. Not ever. Above the canyon, the sky continued to break, raining fire and shadow. But down below, in the dust and smoke, a human carried hope where none had existed. And for the first time, the galaxy began to notice the courage of a single human heart. Relon stayed crouched beside the dragon child for a few moments, letting it rest. The small creature's chest rose and fell quickly, each breath shallow and ragged. Its silver-blue scales were scorched, and one wing hung uselessly by its side. Relon gently touched the broken wing, careful not to hurt it. The dragon hissed softly but didn't pull away. It seemed to sense that he wanted to help, not harm. He looked around the canyon. Smoke from the burning debris still hung thick in the air, twisting in strange shapes. Sparks fell from twisted metal. Somewhere in the distance, a larger shadow moved, an enemy patrol. Relon knew that if he stayed too long, both he and the dragon would be trapped. He needed to move. "I need to get you out of here," he said quietly. The dragon blinked, its golden eyes full of fear and curiosity. Relon carefully lifted it again. Its small body felt heavy in his arms, heavier than he expected. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the ache in his back and arms. Step by step, he moved toward a narrow canyon path that might lead to safety. Each step was a battle. Loose rocks slid beneath his feet, forcing him to stop and shift his weight. Small fires dotted the canyon floor, but when he reached them, the flames bent around his hands like water around stones. He didn't understand it, he had never felt anything like it before, but the warmth comforted him instead of burning him. The dragon child stiffened at first, but then relaxed slightly, sensing the protection. As he walked, Relon noticed small cuts and bruises appearing on the dragon's scales. Smoke and dust made its breathing labored. He whispered to the dragon, telling it to stay calm, even though he wasn't sure if it understood. Its small claws scraped his arms once, twice, testing him. He only tightened his grip, careful not to hurt it. A shadow fell across them suddenly. Relon froze. A sleek drone hovered a few feet above, scanning the canyon. Its sensors glowed red. He realized the patrol had found them. He ducked behind a jagged rock, trying to shield the dragon child, but there was no way to stay hidden for long. The dragon's eyes widened, panicked. It hissed and flared its tiny wings but could not take flight. Relon pressed it closer, feeling its rapid heartbeat against his chest. Then, as if responding to his fear and determination, the heat in his hands rose. Sparks danced from his fingertips, bright and controlled, forming a thin wall of fire between them and the drone. The heat was strong enough to make the drone hesitate, but it did not stop entirely. Relon pushed forward, moving slowly but steadily. The dragon child let out a soft, frightened cry and Relon whispered, "It's okay. I won't let them touch you." Somehow, the flames seemed to answer his voice. They curved and twisted around him, blocking falling debris and enemy fire. The canyon floor ahead cleared just enough for him to step without tripping. Every step felt like lifting more than his own weight. The dragon child's small body was surprisingly strong, resisting slightly against his hold. But he refused to give up. He thought of every human story of courage he had ever known, stories of farmers defending their homes, miners saving lives in collapsing tunnels, workers standing against impossible odds. Humans were fragile, yes, but when they chose to act, they could become unstoppable. That thought gave him strength. Behind them, the drone adjusted, sending a signal that brought another shadow closer. Relon could hear the distant roar of engines and the faint hiss of alien weapons. He realized he could not outrun them forever. But he had no choice. The dragon child depended on him and he could not fail. Step by step, they reached a small ledge, partially hidden behind a fallen boulder. Relon set the dragon down for a brief moment. It looked at him, eyes searching, as if asking if he would leave it. "No," he said simply. "I won't leave you." The dragon made a soft sound, a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Its small wings trembled, but it stayed still. Relon stretched his aching arms, feeling the heat recede slightly, though it lingered around his fingers like a protective shield. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. The canyon was quiet for a few seconds, only the distant hum of the enemy patrol reaching them. In that quiet he noticed something strange. The dragon child seemed to be looking at him differently. Not just as a stranger, not just as someone carrying it, but almost as a guardian. He lifted the dragon again, his arms shaking under its weight. It was tiring, heavier than any load he had carried before. Sweat ran down his face and his legs burned. But he refused to stop. Every step forward was an act of will. Every inch he moved was proof that humans could choose courage even in the face of impossible odds. As they moved, Relon noticed strange symbols on the canyon walls, glowing faintly in the smoke. He did not understand them, but he felt them hum beneath his fingers. The fire in his hands seemed to respond to the symbols, growing warmer, stronger. The dragon child twitched as if sensing the same strange energy. Something ancient was awake, something that had not stirred in centuries, and it was responding to a human. Finally, they reached a narrow tunnel at the base of the canyon. It was dark and barely wide enough for Relon to pass. He paused for a moment, looking back at the open canyon and the approaching danger. Then he moved forward, flames curling around his hands one last time to clear the path of debris. The dragon child nestled against his chest, trusting him in a way no dragon usually trusted a human. Inside the tunnel, the air was cooler and quieter. Relon set the dragon down gently, letting it catch its breath. Its chest rose and fell steadily now, and its golden eyes blinked slowly. He ran his hand along its wing, careful and gentle. For the first time he allowed himself to look at it fully. The dragon child was small, vulnerable, and yet fierce in its own way. It had survived the fall, the fire, the drones, and it would survive because he chose to act. Relon knew the danger was not over. Outside, enemies still searched and the canyon was still burning. But he also knew something new. Something important. He had lifted a dragon child when everyone else would have left it to die. He had carried more than its weight. He had carried the choice to act, the courage to protect, and somehow the awakening of an ancient power that even dragons feared. He sat down in the tunnel, breathing hard, the dragon child resting safely beside him. For the first time he allowed a small smile. He had done it. He had survived the weight of a dragon, and in doing so he had proven something no one could ignore. Humans could carry the impossible, and sometimes the impossible would answer them in return. Relon pressed his back against the cool stone of the tunnel, still holding the dragon child close. The tunnel was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the fire that lingered around his hands. He didn't understand it. The flames didn't burn him. They didn't burn the dragon. They seemed alive, curling around him like a shield, reacting to his thoughts, to his will. He had never felt anything like it, and yet it was strangely familiar, like an echo of something lost long ago. The dragon child stirred in his arms, small wings twitching. Its golden eyes looked at him with a mix of fear and wonder. Relon whispered softly, "I've got you. You're safe now." The child made a soft sound, almost like a sigh, and leaned against him. He realized that the flames were calming it. They weren't threatening. Somehow they were communicating that he would not hurt it. Outside the tunnel, distant explosions shook the canyon walls. Enemy drones patrolled the area, scanning every shadow, every movement. Relon knew they could not stay hidden forever. They had to move, but he felt something stronger than fear guiding him. He lifted the dragon child carefully and stepped toward the tunnel's mouth. The moment he entered the open canyon again, the danger returned. A patrol of drones hovered nearby, their lights scanning for heat signatures. Relon froze for a heartbeat, then the fire around his hands surged. Sparks danced in the air, forming sharp arcs that bent around him. The drones hesitated, scanning, unsure what to do. Humans were fragile. They had never done anything like this. But here was one human moving through fire, untouched, carrying a dragon child. Relon took a step forward. The flames followed him, rising higher, spreading out, forming walls that separated him from the drones. He didn't control them with words, not fully. It was something deeper, something instinctive. Every step, every movement, made the flames respond, protecting him, clearing the path, giving the dragon child room to breathe. The dragon child's eyes widened. It had never seen fire like this, not controlled, not guided. Its small claws pressed against Relon's chest, not in fear but in trust. The child seemed to sense the strange bond forming. The warmth of the flames was not harmful. It was alive. And it answered the human holding it. A drone fired, sending a pulse of energy toward them. The fire flared higher, bending the pulse away like a wall of light. Sparks rained down, but neither Relon nor the dragon child was harmed. Step by step they moved across the canyon floor. Each step was a battle, each movement a test of endurance, but the fire answered every danger. Relon realized he had never felt so alive. His body ached, sweat poured down his face and every muscle screamed, but he did not stop. He had to protect this dragon child, and somehow the fire itself had chosen to help him. It was not rage. It was not power. It was protection, guided by resolve, by courage, by the choice to act when no one else would. The patrol split, unsure how to handle this impossible human. Observers in orbit began to report strange readings. The heat signatures did not match known human capabilities. The flames moved with thought, with intention. This was not an attack. This was defense. The child clung to Relon as he ran, and he felt something awakening inside him, deep in his chest, a strength he had never known. They reached a narrow ridge that overlooked a safer canyon floor below. Relon paused, panting, and looked at the dragon child. Its small body was trembling, not from fear but from exhaustion. He set it gently on the ground, letting it rest for a moment. The flames around his hands spread out, forming a protective dome over both of them. Nothing could reach them here. Not yet. The dragon child lifted its head, eyes full of wonder. It hissed softly, almost in question, as if asking what this power was. Relon smiled faintly. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it wants to help us." The child leaned into him again, trusting him completely. Relon felt a strange connection forming, not just with the dragon child but with something older, something ancient that had stirred in the world. Outside, the enemy drones regrouped. A larger shadow moved over the canyon walls. A warship, sleek in silver, its energy weapons glowing. Relon could feel the tension, the weight of danger pressing down. But he also felt the fire respond to him again. It coiled and twisted, forming patterns he could not control but that kept them safe. Sparks leapt high into the air, marking him as something extraordinary, something the dragons and humans both had long forgotten. He lifted the dragon child again, moving quickly but carefully down the ridge. The flames formed bridges over burning rock, shielding them from debris and enemy fire. Each step required everything he had. Each movement tested him. But the child's small trust, its reliance on him, gave him strength. He realized that he did not carry only the dragon. He carried hope. He carried a chance to remind the galaxy that humans could rise when no one expected it. They reached a hidden cave near the canyon floor, partially obscured by boulders. Relon set the dragon child down gently. Its breathing had steadied, and it looked at him with a quiet intelligence, almost as if it understood. The fire around his hands pulsed once, then slowly faded, leaving a warmth that lingered, comforting rather than threatening. For a long moment they both sat in silence. The dragon child curled against him, small wings twitching occasionally. Relon stared at his hands, trying to understand what had just happened. Fire had answered a human. It had protected a dragon. It had done what no technology, no weapon could do. And it had done it because he chose to act. Relon knew the danger was not over. The enemy patrols would return, and the canyon was still unstable. But he also knew something remarkable. Humans were fragile, yes. But when they chose courage, when they chose to protect instead of destroy, even the impossible could answer them. He looked at the dragon child and whispered, "We're not done yet. But we'll get through this." The child responded with a soft hiss, leaning into him. Relon smiled faintly, feeling a strange calm. The fire had answered him once, and he knew it would answer again if he needed it. Not as a weapon. Not as rage. But as protection, guided by resolve, by human courage, by the choice to act when all others would fail. Above the canyon, the sky was still broken, torn by war and fire. But below, in the shadow of the rocks, a human and a dragon child moved through danger together. And for the first time in centuries, something ancient stirred and remembered that humans were not weak. That when humans chose to protect, even flames themselves would answer. Relon rested for only a moment. The hidden cave offered shelter, but the enemy was still out there. From above, shadows moved against the canyon walls. The drones were regrouping, sending signals to the warships orbiting the planet. He could hear the distant hum of engines and weapons, a reminder that danger was everywhere. The dragon child, Syrinx, lay curled against him, one wing still twisted and useless. Its small claws lightly brushed Relon's arm as it slept, but its breathing was steadier now. Relon studied its golden eyes when they opened briefly. They were full of trust, a trust that no human had ever received from a dragon before. That trust was heavier than any weapon in the galaxy. He knew they could not stay hidden forever. The drones would come and the warship above would not wait. He had to move Syrinx to safety, to a place the dragons would recognize as neutral. But moving again would be dangerous. The canyon was open and every step could be their last. Relon lifted Syrinx carefully. Its weight pressed against his chest, reminding him of the choice he had made, to protect something far stronger than himself. He stepped toward the cave's narrow exit. Flames curled around his hands, small and steady, not burning but ready. The strange energy that had protected him before pulsed gently, as if aware of the coming challenge. Outside, the sky was alive with movement. Drones hovered like mechanical birds of prey, scanning every shadow. And above them, larger warships waited, their weapons glowing with alien energy. Relon felt the pressure in his chest tighten. For the first time, he realized that the galaxy itself was watching. Not just the drones, not just the warships, but dragons in orbit, elders who judged all life were aware of what he had done. He stepped into the open canyon, flames flickering around his hands. The drones paused, hesitant. Humans were weak, slow, and fragile. They should have been easy prey. But this human, he was different. He carried a dragon child and moved through fire as though it were water. The drones fired briefly, energy pulses bouncing harmlessly off the flames, but Relon did not flinch. He kept moving step by step, guided by the simple determination to protect. From orbit, dragon elders observed the scene. They were silent at first, unable to believe what they saw. The legend spoke of humans long ago, of their courage and resilience. But they had forgotten. They had assumed humans were weak, that their lives could be ignored. Yet here was a human carrying a dragon child, moving through fire, untouched and unwavering. Something ancient stirred in their minds, memories of a bond lost centuries ago. Relon felt the heat of the flames rise slightly as he reached a flat rock ledge overlooking a safer canyon below. He set Syrinx down carefully. The dragon child blinked at him, wings twitching, unsure whether to fly or stay. Relon looked up at the sky, feeling the presence of the Watchers. He knew they were judging him, testing him, seeing whether he would bend or break. He stepped forward, placing himself between Syrinx and the open canyon. "You will not touch her," he said aloud, his voice calm but firm. The flames around his hands rose higher, forming arcs that shielded them from falling debris and incoming fire. Sparks danced like living energy, responding to his words, his will, his choice. This was not rage. This was resolve. This was the strength of a human heart. The drones hesitated, unsure how to proceed. They scanned him, tried to measure him, but the readings were impossible. The heat from his hands did not match any known human capability. The child's presence seemed to amplify it, a bond forming between them that defied logic. Every movement Relon made was deliberate, careful, but unstoppable. A warship hovered closer, energy weapons aimed. Relon did not panic. He had no plan for attack, no desire to dominate. All he wanted was to protect Syrinx. The flames surged again, moving like living shields, deflecting pulses of energy and creating paths over burning rock. Step by step, he guided the dragon child to the safer canyon floor below. The dragon elders in orbit were silent no longer. They spoke among themselves, voices low but urgent. "This human," one elder said, eyes narrowing. "It is impossible. Yet it is real." Another elder nodded slowly. "The bond, it is awakening. Long ago humans guided dragons, not ruled them. This one carries that power still." Relon paused at the canyon floor. He looked at Syrinx and smiled faintly. "We made it this far," he said. "But the danger isn't gone." The dragon child hissed softly, acknowledging him in its own way. Relon reached out a hand, letting the flames curl gently over its small body. It did not burn, it protected. It answered him because he had chosen to act. Above, the warship fired a warning beam. Relon ignored it, stepping forward slowly. The drones followed, but every time they approached, the flames moved first, shielding, bending, guiding. Syrinx began to move its wings slightly, testing flight, trusting Relon to protect it. The bond between them grew stronger with every heartbeat. The dragon elders finally spoke aloud, their voices echoing through space. "This human carries the choice. He carries courage. He carries protection where none expected it. This is not war. This is judgment. And he has passed." Relon felt a strange calm wash over him. He did not understand the words, not fully. But he felt their meaning. The galaxy had noticed and in some silent way approved. Humans were fragile, yes, but when they chose to protect, even the impossible would answer them. He lifted Syrinx one final time, carrying the dragon child toward a safer ridge where the canyon walls blocked the drone sensors. The flames around his hands flickered once, then settled into a soft glow, as if recognizing the end of one trial and the beginning of another. Syrinx leaned against him, small body trusting, golden eyes shining with life and awareness. Relon knew they were not safe forever. The enemy patrols would return. The warship would not give up. But something had changed. The watchers above, the dragons, the galaxy itself, had noticed that humans could rise when no one expected it. That courage, simple and unyielding, could awaken forces that no one could ignore. He set Syrinx down gently at the base of the ridge. The dragon child stretched its wings slowly, testing them, preparing to move. Relon stood beside it, arms tired, body aching, but his heart steady. He had faced judgment and survived. He had carried more than a dragon child. He had carried the choice to act, the courage to protect, and the awakening of an ancient power that even dragons feared. The sky remained broken, torn by war and fire. But below, in the shadowed canyon floor, a human had proven something extraordinary, that when humans chose to protect, even the stars themselves could take notice. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered that humans were not weak. They were more than expected. Relon stood on the ridge, watching the canyon stretch below him. Syrinx, the dragon child, had begun to move its wings slowly, testing strength that had been broken in the fall. Sparks of residual fire from Relon's hands still curled faintly around him, a soft glow that refused to fade completely. It was as if the world itself recognized what had happened, that something extraordinary had occurred here. The drones and warships had retreated, their sensors unable to measure or harm the strange fire that had protected him. From above, the dragon elders observed in silence. Their ancient voices carried through space, carrying weight and judgment. The human has proven something we forgot, one said. The courage, the will, the choice to protect. Relon did not know he was being judged. He had only acted step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, carrying the dragon child through fire and death. He had not thought of glory or recognition. He had only known one thing: Syrinx had to survive. That simple choice had changed the galaxy, though he did not yet understand how. Syrinx lifted itself fully, wings trembling but strong enough to hover. It looked at Relon, golden eyes searching, as if asking a question without words. Relon smiled faintly. "You're safe," he said. The dragon made a soft hiss, a sound that seemed like approval. Then it lifted higher, testing the wind currents, circling him once before landing back at his feet. There was a trust between them now, unspoken but absolute. Across the galaxy, observers recorded the event. The tale of a human carrying a dragon child through fire, untouched, unstoppable, spread quickly. Other dragons whispered among themselves, elders recalling legends long buried. Humans were fragile, yes, but their courage had once been legendary. Now, in a single act of protection, one human reminded the galaxy why they could never be ignored. Relon looked out at the canyon and then up at the distant warships that hovered in orbit. He knew danger was not over. There would be others who doubted humans, who thought them weak, expendable. But he also knew something important. The fire had responded because he had acted without fear. Courage, not strength, had protected him. Choice, not power, had guided the flames. That was the difference. That was what made humans remarkable. He lowered himself to the canyon floor and knelt beside Syrinx. The dragon child curled against him, exhausted but alive. Relon touched its small wings gently, careful not to hurt them further. The child flinched slightly at first, then relaxed, trusting him completely. There was no bond like this between humans and dragons, not in generations. Yet here it was, quiet, unshakable, formed in fire and courage. Above, the dragon elders communicated with each other. "This is not merely survival," one said. "This is choice. This is human strength." Another nodded. "The galaxy has underestimated them for too long. The courage of a single human can awaken forces thought lost." Relon did not know about the elders. He only knew the present, the quiet canyon, the smoke curling from burned debris, and the small dragon that had survived because he chose to act. The simple act of protecting another life had carried weight far beyond the canyon walls, far beyond the planet itself. He stood slowly, lifting Syrinx once more. The child's wings flapped weakly but steadily. Together, they moved toward the safer ridges, where the fire from his hands had left a faint glow on rocks and metal. Each step reminded him of the path they had taken, the danger they had faced, the courage required simply to act. The sky above was still broken, streaked with smoke and the fading light of explosions. Yet the stars seemed to shine differently now, as if recognizing the human courage that had moved below. Relon felt a strange calm. He had survived, yes. But more importantly, he had reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. Humans were not weak. They did not seek power, domination, or conquest. But when they chose to protect, when they chose courage over fear, they could awaken forces greater than themselves. Syrinx nudged his hand with its small snout, almost playfully. Relon laughed softly, a sound that carried across the canyon floor. It was a simple sound, a human sound, but in it was relief, pride, and a strange understanding. He had carried more than a dragon child. He had carried the reminder that humans mattered, that their choices could shape the galaxy in ways others could not imagine. The distant drones finally retreated entirely. The warships moved away, perhaps sensing the impossibility of what they had witnessed. The canyon was quiet now, save for the crackle of small fires and the soft whine through the rocks. Relon and Syrinx rested for a moment, both exhausted but alive. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was something permanent, formed in choice, courage, and fire. Far above, dragon ships returned to orbit, carrying news and wonder. The elders shared the story among themselves, voices reverent and surprised. Humans have not changed, one said. But we have forgotten how dangerous their courage can be. How unstoppable their resolve can become. Relon did not care about fame or judgment. He only cared about Syrinx, about carrying the child safely home. But unknowingly his actions had changed the galaxy's perspective. Humans would be remembered, not for their strength or weapons, but for their courage and their choice to act when it mattered most. That choice had awoken flames that no one could ignore, flames that were older than the dragons themselves. He lifted Syrinx carefully, letting the child settle on a safe rock ledge. "You'll be okay now," he said softly. The dragon child hissed, wings flapping lightly, almost in joy. Relon smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the fire in his hands. This was satisfaction, pride, and something deeper, the knowledge that humans could make a difference. That humans, small and fragile as they might seem, could leave a mark on the stars themselves. As night fell over the canyon, Relon watched the first stars appear. Somewhere among them, watchers recorded his actions, and in their silence, humans were remembered. Not for war, not for conquest, not for power, but for the courage to act, the choice to protect, and the heart to face impossible odds. Syrinx nuzzled him gently and Relon leaned back against the rock. The galaxy was wide and dangerous, but humans had shown it something new. Even in fragility there could be strength. Even in weakness there could be courage. And that courage, quiet, persistent, unstoppable, would always be remembered. The fire around his hands had faded, leaving only warmth. The dragon child rested safely beside him. The canyon was quiet, the stars shining above, and the galaxy had learned at last why humans could never be forgotten.